it almost feels like the most underrated narrative here. It's not as much maybe about the crafts that we're trying to reverse engineer, but it's about the people that seem to attract this phenomena. And so like Betty and Barney Hills, this famous, case in 1961, they see this craft coming, I think it's in Vermont or New Hampshire. New Hampshire, that's right. And C.D. Jackson, who's in the Psychological Strategy Board under Eisenhower, and also runs kind of our psychological warfare program.
During the war,
During the war.
And was the editor-in-chief of Life magazine.
There you go. Henry Luce.
Yes.
He goes to New Hampshire and meets with Betty and Barney Hill. And so there's this special interest on the part of the government among the people who've been contacted. Now you have this guy, Chris Bledsoe in North Carolina, who, you have this guy, Jim Semivan, who's a hardcore intel guy, top-ranking CIA official, who's, 20-year intel career, and why is he showing up at Chris Bledsoe's house and asking him what he's, Chris Bledsoe says he's encountered this divine feminine figure that says she's come from the dark side of the moon. Is Semivan just wasting his time, spending time with him? It almost feels like people are the conduit for this esoteric information, and there's a strata of intel that's interested in the people themselves.
All of that's true.
Like Greer, for example, who you worked with, he started doing these C5 protocols and attracting the sort of alien stuff, and then you have Albert Stubblebine and John Alexander get in touch with him. And it's almost like they're trying to recruit him into something. They become very interested in him because he's an attractor of this stuff.
You're getting warm now.
Okay, so what does all this mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, what it means is that there's a very definite psychic connection here. What we as human beings, Homo sapiens, refer to as psychic capacities. Telepathy, precognition. Remote viewing capacities. There's a whole series of charisms they're basically referred to in the Hindu stuff as siddhas. Which is they're a function of consciousness. Is that clearly our human species is capable of experiences that are non-normal.
Yes.
Regular normal people don't have these experiences, or at least they don't realize it. My first year of law school, I had come up from Harvard College, had gone across the street to the law school, and I had heard that Crane Brinton, who was the chairman of the Department of Intellectual History at Harvard for 30 years, and he was going to be doing his last lecture, and he said, he got up and he said, I've been asked to lecture on what I think the most important single intellectual insight of our human family is that I've encountered in my 50 years. And he said, and this is easy. He said, I think that all the greatest minds of our human family have come to realize that our human family is right on the brink of its next step in biological evolution. And that we're going to be evolving from Homo sapien into the next stage of our biological evolution. And the key factor that is going to differentiate the next species from us is this evolution of this faculty. There's a faculty like seeing or hearing that is able to directly and immediately experientially access a certain vibrational frequency that exists in the universe, like light or like sound, but that there's an extraordinarily subtle bonding phenomenon that bonds every single ultimately irreducible integer of matter in the entire physical universe into one unified harmonic whole. And that this is discernible. It's extraordinarily subtle, but there's a faculty that is evolving by means of which we can access this experience. And when one has this experience, it's like a crystal set locking into a kind of a radio signal, and that you lock into this unitive phenomenon in the universe, and it can download all kinds of information to you non-linearly, like seeing or hearing. He said in that this faculty, we're at the brink of moving into this new species. He said, and I think he said to us all, this is 1968, right? This is like May of 1968. And he says, and I think that's why so many of you young men here refuse to go fight in this war in Vietnam.
Ah, wow.
That's what he said to us in that lecture.
So he's saying that, You know Pierre Desjardins, like the
I know
new,
Pierre
the new,
very well, as a matter of fact.
the new sphere.
Yeah,
like
noosphere.
the
right.
the sort of mental sheath
Yeah.
around the Earth that you can
Yeah.
sort of tap into.
Yeah,
where the
noosphere.
Russian cosmists sort of believed in something similar.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
do the Chinese.
interesting.
This first thing that Dr. Zhen Zhoujing showed me. Dr. Zhen Zhoujing, who's head of the Chinese Academy of Social Science, that they've got this faculty in Beijing, 300 of the top professors in all fields that are there for the Politburo. And I met her, that I was chairing for the State of the World Forum for Gorbachev and for James Baker at the end of the Cold War, that I chaired a thing called the Strategic Initiative to Identify the New Paradigm. And I met her in that context, and she invited me to come to China. And
Wow.
as soon as I showed up, the first thing she did is she brought me to the laboratory, showing me all these experiments they were doing with psychic abilities. And they were exploring and trying to figure out what all this was. And so that this is a very real thing that our human family is going through right now. It's a transition period into a kind of a new paradigm. And the UFO stuff is part of it, you know?
Well, aerospace has been very interested in parapsychology, mind over matter, for a very long time.
Yes.
They've sort of hidden it. But like you have James McDonnell, who's the patron of McDonnell Douglas. He had a parapsychology institute in the 60s. You had, I think he was actually pretty close with Bob John, who was the dean of engineering at Princeton, who went on to start the Princeton anomalies, you know,
Yeah.
pair. And
This is extraordinarily important.
It's really important.
And people who guffaw at it and poke fun at it and stuff are just not only ignorant, but they're arrogant.
I just had a call with, I'll delete this I'll ask him if I can put this in here, but the head of revolutionary technologies at Skunkworks. I think this is okay to say because he's on record sort of believing in this stuff, but he's head of like the program that, you know, like our most important recon aircrafts just on an objective level come out of. And he believes in all this stuff. He I think is on record.
If he didn't, he shouldn't be in this position he's in.
Totally. No, exactly. If anything can procure an advantage for them, they have to be studying it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's very interesting just how interested they are in this sort of mind over matter stuff. And it's almost like a cleavage between academia, which shut down, you know, all ideas around parapsychology in the 70s through 90s, and then aerospace, where it's like, it's just basic game theory. You have to do anything to get an advantage. Where they really went way deeper into parapsychology, and then academia is stuck in string theory, which is a stupid abstract math that hasn't gotten us anything. It hasn't shipped any product.
They're still stuck in the scientific, logical, positivist, materialist worldview.
That's right.
You know, it's institutionalized at the academy, at the university level, and that therefore you can't get cutting edge exploration on the part of some of the better minds of our human family. They won't allow it.
Yes.
Philosophy, theology, and any of them, you can't go there.
Yes.
And so that's why you have these other, like that we have a relationship with the New Paradigm Institute, or a thing called Ubiquity University. They're accredited in Europe, but they can't get accredited here in the United States because they talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And saying, look, we've got to get intelligent minds working on this in some systematic way.
It's so absurd. We spend $15 billion on a Large Hadron Collider, and you have the possibility that there's a mind-matter interface, that kind of our Cartesian dualist ideas are just totally off.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe, you know, sub 50 million has been spent on, you know, parapsychology in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
Of course you're not going to make progress.
I know.
And maybe that's by design. I don't quite know.
You know, and they're still you know, lighting like rocket fuel on fire and burning it,
chemical combustion,
to shoot a rocket up into the, and they're spending billions of dollars on that as a front operation.
You think it's a front?
Oh,
So you
sure
think like
it is.
SpaceX is a front?
Totally.
For what?
For what's really known about the way that these craft really work.
Right,
you know,
but then are we operating the craft then, or when you say it's a front?
Well, no, it's interesting that they obviously ran into a major problem that they weren't able to pilot the craft because it's consciousness that pilots the craft.
Yeah, like this hybridization of the person and the craft, which makes sense if you look at a random event generator. You have, you know, basically the mind affecting random kind of quantum mechanical processes like quantum tunneling or radioactive isotope decay.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have this almost like perfect digital coin flip created. You have one and a zero that's showing up on a screen, but it's tied to this perfect random quantum mechanical process. And an observer is present, and they can statistically, beyond the standard deviation, sway it between 1 and 0. And so maybe there's something about the ability to pilot the craft that, you know, requires a certain level of internal harmony or
You're
consciousness.
extrapolating on the point I was making.
Yeah.
Is that they weren't able to fly them.
Yeah.
They've got them, but they can't fly them.
Have you ever seen a UFO?
No.
Have you ever
I've seen photographs.
You've seen a picture of a UFO?
Photographs.
Where have you seen a picture of a UFO?
In the classified files of Project Blue Book.